rate. A man who knows about the inner workings of Congress and campaigns, Matt Towery, political analyst from Inside Advantage, is Skyping in to talk about the after effects of the Cantor upset. Matt, it was interesting. Our friend Newt Gingrich quoted at our parent website, Newsmax.com, saying that Eric Cantor ought to take his consultants and his pollsters and sue them for political malpractice. But first, last, and always, and I know this for purposes of full disclosure, having been through it a couple of times, when you finish second, there's all the second guessing, but it ultimately comes down to the guy whose name is on the ballot. First, a political postmortem on the Cantor race with Dave Brat.
Well, you know, I appeared with you guys just a few days ago, and I was one of those pundits who swallowed the idea that this was going to be the easy win for Cantor. What I have learned is one thing, JD. I will never pay attention to another campaign pollster again. That whole group in Washington, D.C., unlike those of us who poll for news organizations, like I poll for Newsmax and Politico and the like, we're graded and looked at and ranked by every so-called expert in the country. If we're four points off, they want us to take us out and shoot us. When you're 34 points off, that's a lot off. Now, Newt's not, we're lawyers, and Newt's not a lawyer. One thing I'll say, having run Newt's campaigns, you can't sue the pollster. The standard of care for pollsters is about the same as fortune tellers. That having been said, he does make a point, and I've been with Newt before when we've wanted to do the same with some other pollsters we use.
Well, Matt, we talked to you on election night 2012, and you were dead on getting some of those counties in the panhandle of Florida that most folks thought were going to go Republican. They turned out going Democrat. But when we looked at that internal polling from the Cantor race, I think the margin of error was around 4% here. And then it was off by quite a bit. They showed that Cantor at one point was ahead by 34 points. I got a B in statistics, but obviously you know more about it than I do. How does this happen? How do they get it so wrong?
It shouldn't happen. And I know John McLaughlin. I don't want to beat him to a bloody pulp. I wrote about him in my national column that we'll see on our sister Newsmax site later this week. But in essence, I believe these pollsters, and we've all used them out of D.C., they've become stale because they're not graded. They operate in this sort of little echo chamber. There are about 5 organizations that everyone uses. They're using old technology, old techniques. Their sampling is not good. They can't keep up with things. And as a result, a lot of times they have clients who are very upset. It's actually a 40+% mistake is just almost inconceivable in the world of polling. I feel sorry for John because I know it's hurting him a lot. But quite frankly, I just can't understand how he got there unless he simply just polled Republican. I think he oftentimes polls super Republican voters. And this thing obviously had crossover and over other folks. And if you don't do that, you can get caught with a really bad number.
Well, Matt, one situation where there is not polling, but there is an active whip count going on is within the House Republican Conference, as Cantor announces that he will step down as majority leader effective July 31st. Now, 3 names coming forward as possible successors for House Majority Leader, and you take a look at Kevin McCarthy, who's the current whip, who has the old seat of Bill Thomas out in California, Pete Sessions of Texas, and Jeb Hensarling of Texas. It seems right there, Texas may have the largest delegation, but if you end up splitting that delegation, McCarthy being endorsed by Eric Cantor, I initially thought that might be the kiss of electoral death within the conference. But what do you see happening in this race for leader?
You know, JD, I can remember talking to Newt Gingrich on one morning when we were counting our heads for his reelection as Speaker back in 1998, and we had the numbers, and I headed off to my mountain house, and by 6 o'clock he wanted to quit. That is how quickly things can change in that conference, as you well know. My guess is that whatever the conventional wisdom is right now, once they get to making their, and you know how it operates, they get into their little cliques and their little sub-caucuses, and then they start trying to make their deals. I don't know what name is going to emerge. McCarthy seems like he would be most likely, but, you know, there is a little time between this and the vote, and a lot can take place. A lot has been made of Jeb because he was sort of the choice of the most conservative members to sort of take on Boehner if they were going to challenge him next go-around. So I just don't know what happens when you have two Republicans from Texas splitting things out, and you've got sort of the mainstream guy, McCarthy, sort of being the the Cantor successor, Taft by Cantor, you could have anything happen. There could be another name pop up. You remember we went from Livingston to Hastert in a matter of weeks. So anything can happen right now.
And Matt, how much sway does the conservative wing of the party have in this decision? We know it comes down to a vote here, but things do happen behind closed doors in Congress and in those office buildings, those congressional office buildings. But how much sway does the Tea Party wing, the grassroots, have in the choice here? Because there has been some unhappiness with the leadership as of yet being maybe too established.
Well, and to a good point here, they have been teetering on the edge of having just enough votes to be the swing group in any sort of challenge, for example, to Boehner. And let's put the cards on the table here. Eric Cantor was always playing cat and mouse as to whether he was Boehner's best friend or he wanted to take his place. And that was probably one of the eyes off the ball that took place that kept him from paying attention to his own district, much less others who have been looking at this as a possibility of being a springboard. Boehner's sort of off the hot seat for the moment because it's that second position they're all fighting for, as well as minority whip. But I think the conservatives are probably going to have a little more power than we think because they seem to have momentum with them right now. They're going to argue this whole thing is going to move more in their direction, and they need someone who reflects their side.
Matt Towery from Insider Advantage Georgia. We appreciate you Skyping in your thoughts and a couple of war stories to boot from your days working with and for Speaker Newt Gingrich. Good to have you.
Good to see you guys.
So we're going to see that this is going to be, for political junkies, a lot of fun and instructive if you want to see what happens in an intra-party situation where you're trying to pick leadership. Next, we're going to turn our broadcast over to you. Your comments are straight ahead. We always invite those comments. You can tweet them to us at NewsmaxTV, #AmericasForum. There's email, the address, connect@newsmaxtv.com, and it's facebook.com/Newsmax. We are coming back with your comments following this break on America's Forum.